The New Physiology, Part 4, Lesson 9. Blood building. The problem of blood building in the human body involves all problems of health and disease. In other words, your health and disease depend almost entirely on your diet, whether you eat right or wrong foods, which foods harm you, thereby building and producing disease, and which foods heal and keep your body in ideal condition, which ones build natural, good blood, and which ones build wrong, bad, acid, diseased blood. These questions and their correct answers are the fundamentals of dietetics and of my mucusless diet healing system. In this lesson, I teach only the principal truth in general. All particulars and details are covered in the entire course. In fact, my diet of healing in its main and essential part consists of building a new, perfect blood with continual supply from natural foods with vital elements through which the bloodstream is enabled to dissolve and eliminate all waste, all mucus, all poisons, and all drugs ever taken during a lifetime, wherever and for as long as a time as they may have been stored up as latent disease in the body. What the official physiology of nourishment teaches for best blood building is doubly wrong. First, it is wrong principally as a problem of physiological chemistry, and second, from the truth of nature. Here again I must quote that great authority of physiological chemistry, Professor von Bunge, who personally told me that he does not endorse official medical teaching. Says von Bunge, life is based on transformation of substances, through which process power, efficiency, becomes free, just as it takes place in every chemical process of transformation, from one chemical entity of atoms and molecules into another one. The authors that started physiological science lacked principally knowledge in chemistry due to a more humanistic education rather than in science of nature. On the other hand, inorganic chemistry was not sufficiently developed at this time. The misleading idea was again protein. They reasoned as follows: muscles, tissues, the entire body's essential substance is protein. Therefore, this substance must be introduced into the blood in order to build, to grow. In other words, you must eat muscles to build muscles. You must eat protein to build protein. You must eat fat to build fat, and in the case of a nursing mother, she must drink milk to make milk. As they believed and still believe in metabolism and the necessity of replacing everyday used-up cells, these principles are followed in the diet of the average mixed eater. To take an inorganic iron, lime, etc., in an endeavor to replace the same substance in the body is a similar error. The cow builds flesh, tissues, bones, hair, milk, efficiency, and heat, all from grass exclusively. Feeding milk to a cow to increase milk production would be classified as the height of folly, and yet humans do this very thing with themselves. Today, every substance of the human body is chemically analyzed, and doctors dream of perfecting chemically concentrated food substances in the future, making it possible for you to carry your meals in your vest pocket in sufficient quantities to last a couple of days. That will never happen for the human body, as it does not assimilate a single atom of any food substance that is not derived from the vegetable or fruit kingdom. All manufactured food mixtures, when too concentrated, either of the animal or vegetable kingdom, does not build blood but stimulate only. Animal foods cannot build good blood. In fact, they do not build human blood at all, because of the biological fact that humans are by nature fruit eaters. Look at the juice of a ripe blackberry, black cherry, or black grapes. Doesn't it almost resemble your blood? Can any reasonable person prove that half-decayed muscle tissues build better blood? Just as soon as the animal is killed, that flesh is more or less in decomposition, and they are put through the destructive process of cooking. No meat-eating animal can live on cooked meat. They must eat it fresh and raw, blood, bones, and all. Complete details about the right and natural foods will be taught later, and you will learn the truth. I will only mention at this time one important fact, which is essential in my dietetic teaching, and by which I differ from all others, even from other dietetic experts who still believe in concentrated albumin, concentrated mineral salts, etc., being required for good blood building. Albumin is not the most important substance for our blood, nor is it mineral salts alone that build perfect blood. The cardinal standard substance for human blood is the highest developed form of carbohydrate, chemically called sugar stuff, grape or fruit sugar, as contained more or less in all ripe fruits, and in the next lower state in vegetables. The newer advanced science teaches that even the small amount of protein that is necessary is developed from grape sugar. Vegetable-eating animals transform these foods first into grape sugar, and then, as a matter of fact, the body in its entirety. But the essential point of disagreement regarding this particular problem is not in the food blood-building problem. Whoever does not know disease, latent, acute, and chronic as taught in Lesson 5, will never believe in the truth of human nourishment. As you now know through past lessons, just as soon as the blood is improved through fruits, the average person immediately starts the elimination of obstructions, feels better for a while, but when more and more waste is dissolved and with the resultant next shock of obstruction in the circulation, all faith is lost, and they, the doctor and all, blame the lack of efficiency food. They think and everyone suggests that they need regular food, which stimulates them for a while and causes them to believe that it must be the meat and eggs that build good blood. In other words, the problem of blood building through right and proper food, the dietetic problem in its entirety, will not be solved, and the truth will not be accepted nor believed and practiced by those who have not learned what happens, and just what it means to heal by the new and real blood-building foods. This is the deeper reason why doctors believe in and recommend destructive foods, and why the average person keeps them up and increases them continually, for they do not possess the slightest idea of what disease is and how they pollute their blood on a daily basis. Lesson 9, Footnotes. Number 1. In other words, your health and the diseases you suffer depend almost entirely on your diet. The wrong foods harm you and produce disease, while the right foods heal you and keep your body in an ideal condition through building natural, good blood. The harmful foods build wrong, bad, acidic, diseased blood. 2. Stimulation means to temporarily increase the activity of an organism, or its body organ. Ehret's proposition is that mucus-forming foods are not nurturing or nutritious, but serve only to unnaturally stimulate the body like a poisonous drug. 3. Carbohydrates, more commonly referred to as carbohydrates, are any of a large class of organic compounds consisting of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They are produced in green plants by photosynthesis. Sugars, starches, and cellulose are all carbohydrates. For Ehret, the highest form of carbohydrate-containing foods for humans are fresh, fat-free fruits derived of simple sugars. Critique of all other healing systems and unbiased, unprejudiced reviews. Lesson 10. The methods of healing are numberless. Outside of a great domination of superstition in this field, the serious methods can be divided into two principally different classes. Number 1, medicine. Number 2, drugless healing. The history of medicine shows that, especially in the past, drugs and other mysterious inventions were taken from quacks. A great number of medicines, standard remedies, for example, mercury, were introduced by quacks. The modern serums, etc., are not better, regardless of their being scientifically prepared. As we now know exactly what disease is, we may understand a fact medicine cannot explain, and that is why symptoms of disease can be suppressed by drugs and serums to a certain limit. The results are known only through experiences, but medicine does not know why these results, special effects, happen. This is the secret. If the body of any sick person endeavors to eliminate poisons manifested by any kind of symptoms, and a new, dangerous poison is introduced into the circulation, that elimination through the system is more or less stopped because the body instinctively sets to work to neutralize these poisons as far as it is possible. The symptoms return just as soon as the life is saved, and the same procedure is repeated until the patient dies, or, if intelligent enough, casts medicine aside in time and seeks to save himself by drugless healing. The methods of drugless healing are also very numerous, and they can be divided into three parts. Number 1, physical treatments. Number 2, mental treatments. And number 3, dietetic treatments. Physical treatments. In general, all physical treatments have a tendency to loosen local constitutional encumbrances through various kinds of vibrations and thermal differences. The Knipe cure, for instance, is in fact an application of artificial colds, which stimulates the circulation, and through that, the elimination. Exercise, calisthenics, breathing exercises, massage, osteopathy, physical therapy, etc., perform in principle the same. However, chiropractic claims a special scheme. The subluxation is removed, But chiropractics, similarly to drugs, may give immediate successful relief from painful symptoms, but as a matter of fact, they return sooner or later if the adjustments are discontinued and wrong method of living is persisted in. The cause of subluxation is an accumulation of foreign matters between the bones of the spine, and we know that they all have their source through wrong eating. The same as all other symptoms of disease. No doubt, the overweight of the average human in general is another cause of subluxation. Under longer fastings, I saw many deformed spines improve wonderfully. There are various other methods used to shake the tissues and stimulate circulation, i.e., electricity, electric light, sunlight, etc. All of these methods help and relieve more or less, but they can never heal perfectly, just as long as they fail to pay sufficient attention to a correct diet. In other words, the elimination of disease or foreign matters will never be complete as long as the intake through wrong foods is not discontinued and an entirely new blood building is established through real, natural, and clean mucusless foods. Mental treatments. It cannot be denied that the condition of the mind has an influence on every kind of disease. It is proven that fear, sorrows, and worries have a bad influence not only on the heart and nerves, but on the circulation, digestion, etc. Psychotherapy, mental and divine healing, Christian Science, have this one great advantage. They save the unfortunate sick from the injuries of drugs. On the other hand, I cannot grant them too much credit. For while they are harmless in a certain sense, they have a tendency, consciously or unconsciously, to keep people in complete darkness as to what disease really is. We who know exactly what disease is cannot agree with a teaching that endeavors to make sick people believe they can be healed by a miracle or a forced imagination, that they are not sick at all, even though they are actually dying that very minute. It is farcical, not to say pitiful, to pray to the Creator for a miraculous healing, rejecting and disregarding real divine foods, the fruits of paradise, the bread of heaven, and instead stuff your stomach 3 times daily with harmful prepared foods, manufactured by humans for commercial purposes, and never designed by the Creator to be humans' food at all. It is rather difficult to believe in mental healing at all, after knowing as I do through actual experiences with thousands of patients that the average chronic sick, especially the well-fed one, is in fact a living cesspool. Nature is the manifestation of the divine laws, and there are no miracles in nature. If you have eaten wrong for 30, 40, 50 years, thereby producing your disease, you must do the necessary compensation as reparation for your sins. You must do the opposite by eating clean, natural divine food, which will produce health instead of disease. That is as clear as sunlight and as logical as 2 times 2 equals 4. The philosophy of Miss Eddy is a poor copy of Schopenhauer's world of imagination, that the mind only is real and not the physical. Her logic would be correct if she had said, it was never the intention nor in the plan of God to produce disease, but as a logical consequence through disobedience of the divine laws of life, disease is produced. There could be no disease if humans lived right in accordance with the divine story of the Genesis arguments. In the light of evolution, we may understand the true meaning of the Lord, even when he says he will punish and kill them till they come back to him. In plain instead of mysterious words, you and all humankind will suffer and die from disease so long as you fail to return again to the laws of the Creator, to the laws of nature as humans lived in paradise. Practitioners of the mucusless diet healing system should avail themselves of the knowledge already gained and live on mucusless foods, the divine clean food of Genesis, fruits and green leaf vegetables called herbs, so that they may demonstrate the truth as living examples. This will aid the patient to learn and believe the truth as exemplified by you, and free their mind from all wrong and superstitious ideas about disease, as well as from all doubts about the one and only way of real help, the compensation of their disease-producing habits. You must heal, that is, free the patient's brain from all ignorance and lift their mind with the light of truth, so that they may have unshaken faith to follow your advice with enthusiasm. That is the true essential for mental healing. Lesson 10 Footnotes. Number 1. Miss Mary Baker Eddy, 1821 through 1910, was the founder of Christian Science 1879, a controversial system of religious thought and practice adopted by the Church of Christ scientists. She was the author of the movement's textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, and the founder of the Christian Science Publishing Society in 1898, which continues to publish a number of periodicals including the Christian Science Monitor, 1908. Number 2. See discussion of Genesis 1 section 29 in the notes of lesson 1. Confusion in Dietetics, lesson 11. In this very important lesson, it's necessary for me to convince you once and for all of the following facts. First, that in food, in diet, lies 99.9% of the causes of all diseases and imperfect health of any kind. Second, that consequently all healing, all therapeutics will continue to fail so long as they refuse to place the most important stress on diet. Third, that what I call mucusless diet and mucus-forming foods divides characteristically all human foods into harmless, natural healing and real nourishing foods, and into harmful, disease-producing ones. Fourth, that all other dietetics are mainly wrong because they lay their stress on food values entirely, whether wrong or not, instead of healing, cleaning, eliminating values, and their efficiency before the healing process is started, going on, or accomplished at all. See Lesson 5. The dietetic problem, what shall humans eat to be healthy or to heal their disease, is, in fact, the problem of life, as little as it is considered or even known as the most important question. Long ago, I coined the following phrase: life is a tragedy of nutrition. The confusion and ignorance regarding what to eat is, in fact, so great that it must be necessarily called the missing link of the human mind. That medical science and even so-called natural therapeutics see dietetics in general as a secondary question of healing is significant. Even the efficiency of a machine depends upon the quality and amount of its fuel. There is no longer any doubt existing regarding the fact that a plant depends more on the kind of soil rather than the climate to produce a high-quality fruit. Farmers understand thoroughly that everything depends on what they feed their livestock. Health and disease of the animal and human body is 99.99% dependent on food. This is tremendously manifested by nature through the simple fact that every animal refuses food when sick. The animal instinct of responding to every disease or even accident by fasting is nature's demonstration that health and disease depend mainly and entirely from eating or not eating, as well as the kind of foods. That the average person, and even the reformed doctors, blames everything on earth, excepting food, as the cause of their disease is due to the tragic fact that disease is as yet a mystery in their minds. They don't know how terribly unclean the inside of the body is, caused through the lifelong habit of overeating 10 times as much as required. In many cases, harmful foods, mostly or even exclusively. If the average eater, even in so-called perfect health, fasts 3 or 4 days, their breath and the entire body as well as their discharges are of an offensive odor which signifies, demonstrates, and indicates that his or her system is filled up with decayed, uneliminated substances, brought in through no other manner than by eating. This accumulated and continually increasing waste is his or her latent unknown disease, and when nature wants to eliminate it by any kind of a shock, commonly known as disease, they first try everything to heal themselves, excepting to fast, to stop increasing the cause of the disease, the inside waste. You now have learned how wrong medicine is trying to stop nature's healing, eliminating process called disease, and thereby increasing the inside waste through drugs and serums. But natural therapeutics of all kinds of elimination will never heal perfectly, just so long as you fail to discontinue the supply of inside waste caused by eating and wrong eating. You may clean and continue to clean indefinitely, but never with complete results up to a perfect cleanliness, as long as the intake of wrong or even too much right foods is not stopped. If it is a fact that food alone is chiefly to blame for all disease, as nature so clearly demonstrates, then it is logical and self-evident that you can heal only by fat, and radically only, if necessary, with the most rational diet, fasting, nature's only remedy in the animal kingdom. Therefore, if any kind of diet shall heal, it must consist of food, not according to food values as to their nourishing and rebuilding qualities, but according to qualities of healing, of cleaning, and of elimination. Here is the cardinal reason why, as well as where, all other dietetics fail. My diet of healing, the mucusless diet, divides, as stated above, all foods strictly into 2 kinds, certain ones which heal, and certain ones which produce disease. It is not sufficient, as the layperson imagines, to only know which foods are mucusless, and which are mucus-forming, but, number 1, how far and how fast the change can successfully be made. Number 2, how the combination of different foods has to be arranged, and, number 3, how long and how often fasting must be introduced and combined during the healing diet if found necessary. This is the system of the mucusless diet and fasting. It represents what the practitioner has to study and must learn, and what the layperson does not know, and consequently why they must inevitably fail when trying to cure a person with good foods. After the foregoing explanation, you will at once see in the following critique of the best-known dietetics why they are imperfect and why the confusion is so great. In later lessons, you will also learn of every kind of food, why it is good, and why bad. In case you are still unaware which of the foods are mucusless and which are mucus-forming, they are as follows. All fruits, raw or cooked, also nuts and green leaf vegetables, are mucus-free. All other foods of civilization, without exception, are mucus and acid-forming, and therefore are harmful. Lesson 11. Footnotes. Number 1. The meaning of Ehret's statement, a tragedy of nutrition, is often misunderstood, especially by those not familiar with his work. Many assume that Ehret is suggesting that the tragedy refers to the idea that people are not getting enough, or the right kind of, nutrition. But as articulated in previous chapters, Ehret denounces what has become the traditional Western dietetic theory of nutrition. If Ehret does not support most concepts of nutrition, then what does he mean by a tragedy of nutrition? Historically, the word tragedy initially referred to a play or other serious literary works with an unhappy ending. Later, it also came to be used to identify any unhappy event or disaster. My proposition is that the tragedy of nutrition is not about the lack or poor choice of nutritious foods. The tragedy is that the concept of nutrition, 1, erroneously exists, and 2, is dietetically opposed to the truth of natural laws governing animal life on earth. In other words, the tragedy is not only that people eat poorly and die, but think that they are eating healthy, or taking drugs responsibly, and die not realizing that pus, mucus-forming foods, and drugs are the foundation of their demise. Nutrition is the great scientific paradox of our time, insofar as its doctrines teach that we must eat certain mucus-forming foods to survive, yet mucus-forming foods are not only unnatural for humans, but the foundation of human illness. For more of my thoughts on the concept of nutrition, see Spira Speaks. Number 2. This statement often raises questions about what foods are and are not truly mucus-forming. First, the assertion that nuts are mucus-free contradicts what is said later in the book when they are identified to be mucus-forming. Also, many readers assume that avocados are mucus-free because they are technically a fruit. Although avocados are not addressed specifically by Ehret, as they did not become a prevalent salad item until the 1950s, Ehret's discussion about nuts can help us to understand the mucus-forming nature of avocados and other fatty fruits or vegetables. With that said, the mucusless diet does contradict itself regarding nuts. In Lesson 16 on the transition diet, Ehret writes, other kinds of grated nuts or nut butter may be served once in a while for this purpose, transition diet, but are too rich in protein and will produce, if continually used, mucus and uric acid. In Lesson 22, Destructive Diet of Civilization, he explains, all nuts are too rich in protein and fat, and should be eaten only in winter, and then only sparingly. Nuts should be chewed together with some dried sweet fruits or honey, never with juicy fruits, because water and fat do not mix. With the possible exception of nuts, the above represent about all of the foods which have to be prepared in some manner for eating. In fact, they are tasteless unless specially prepared. Lesson 22. The contradiction arises when Ehret asserts, all fruits, raw or cooked, also nuts and green leaf vegetables, are mucus-free. Lesson 11. To be clear, nuts are mucus-forming. But why was this statement made? There are several explanations for this, but the two main ones are that 1. In comparison with meat, nuts are virtually mucus-free, and 2. That Ehret's editor, Fred Hirsch, took certain liberties during the assemblage of early editions of the mucusless diet, and may be responsible for the mishap. Some of these changes or contributions can be easily identified, as we will see later in the vegetarian recipe section, whereby the editor, obviously Hirsch, explains why he added the mucus-lean menus, although Ehret resisted requests to do so. Ehret ultimately asserts that fats of any kind, including the ordinary butter, are unnatural and therefore should not be eaten. Lesson 15. All fats are acid-forming, even those of vegetable origin, and are not used by the body. You will like, crave, and use them only as long as you can still see mucus in the magic mirror. Lesson 22. This principle extends to all fatty fruits or vegetables, including avocados, nuts, coconut meat, olives, durian, etc. Confusion in Dietetics, Part 2, Lesson 12. The average vegetarian diet omits only meat from the menu, and their mixture of larger quantities of fruits, good foods, with eggs and milk cause overeating, in most cases being worse than moderate meat eating and a less mixed diet. 3 prominent physicians improved the vegetarian diet, but they fail like all other dietitians on the following single point. They believe more or less in high-protein foods during the diet of healing. In other words, all dietitians without a single exception outside of myself think that the body, and especially the sick and weak one, requires good, nourishing food to be healed, overlooking the fact that nature alone heals and does it best by fasting. Please read Lesson 5 again so that you may fully comprehend the reason. Dr. Lehmann, a German physician, proved in his dietetical disinformation of blood that carbonic acid is the cause of all diseases, but he failed to see the deeper cause, the fermentation caused through mucus-forming foods mixed with fruits. He believed in, and fell a victim to, the protein theory, in spite of his greatly advanced knowledge. Dr. Haig, an English physician, with his anti-uric acid diet, showed much improvement, but failed in the same manner as Dr. Lehmann. Dr. Catani, an Italian physician, made up a diet of fruits, green vegetables, and meat, eliminating all starch, and healed more or less, including cases of rheumatism and gout, which Dr. Haig blamed meat solely for these diseases. The secret of Dr. Catani's starchless diet is its laxative effect. It relieves like the laxatives contained in mineral water springs, but does not heal perfectly. You can see where the point of confusion lies. Dr. S. Graham, an American physician whose physiology of nourishment was fundamental at the time, improved the bread especially. But the improvement consists not in the fact that Graham, bran, and whole wheat bread is more valuable than ordinary white bread, but through its efficiency owing to a less constipating quality than white bread. White flour makes good paste. Graham or the whole wheat flour does not. Dr. Graham found an opponent in Dr. Densmore of England, who claimed that overeating of bran, whole cereals, and Graham bread caused inflammation of the intestines. This is, of course, an exaggeration, but Dr. Densmore helped the general improvement of dietetics by advocating more fruits and vegetables. Dr. Lehmann, the German chemist Hensel, and some authorities in the United States are the founders of what may be called the mineral salt movement. The stress in this dietetic reasoning is placed upon the fact that all acid and mucus-forming foods lack the necessary mineral salts. But it proved a fad, like the protein fad, thinking health could be regained by overflowing the body with artificially manufactured mineral salts preparations and keeping up your old wrong habits at the same time. You improve, relieve to a certain limit, but never heal perfectly. In a later lesson, you will learn how chemist Ragnar Berg improved this system to a certain degree. A person neutralizes acid-forming foods with mineral salt-rich ones. Raw food diet. At present, among the vegetarian health seekers, raw food diet is in fashion. No doubt it represents great progress, but the arguments are partly wrong and lead to mistaken and fanatic extremes. They claim all cooking destroys food values, but it should be said properly. Wrong cooking destroys healing value qualities, efficiency of foods, and can even cause them to become acid-forming. The raw food experts hint on the same wrong stress as all others, i.e. the higher food value. The entire effect or benefit from raw food is the rough fiber of uncooked vegetables, which relieves constipation and acts as an ideal mucus broom in the intestines. I do not believe that the human body assimilates food value vegetables, such as cauliflower, asparagus, turnips, potatoes, or from uncooked cereals. After a certain beneficial mechanical cleansing of the bowels through these raw foods, the one-sided raw food eater lacks, in fact, the most important food substance, and that is grape or fruit sugar, unless they eat sufficient fruits. Significant and instructive is this experiment. Put a lemon in a moderate dry heat a few minutes, and it becomes sweet, like an orange. You develop grape sugar, but let it bake a little too long, or if cooked, it becomes bitter. On the same principle, all vegetables when baked improve by developing the more or less starch they contain into grape sugar. This is true of carrots, beets, turnips, cauliflower, etc. Raw fruits and, if desired, raw green leafy vegetables form the ideal food for humans, that is, the mucusless diet. But the mucusless diet as a healing system uses raw, rough vegetables for their cleansing qualities, baked ones as food, and baked and stewed fruits, as a less aggressive dissolver of poisons and mucus, to moderate the elimination in severe cases. That is one of the most important principles of the system, a point the raw food fanatic ignores entirely. Eating raw potatoes, raw cereals, and unfired pies is, in my opinion, absurd. and worse than if they are carefully baked, which means developing the starch into at least partly digestible gluten and grape sugar. Fletcherism. The American Horace Fletcher developed a complete dietetic healing system in itself, with great success on himself and others. His theory was to eat what kind of food you desired, but chew every bite 10 to 15 minutes. You may eat one sandwich a day and get rid of your trouble. The secret is simply this. It is a camouflaged fast. The stomach and intestines have a rest, the same as when fasting, and elimination is promoted, and the vital organs recuperate. But when continued longer, the bowels constipate from a lack of solid food, and it is said that Fletcher himself died through severe trouble in these organs. Another camouflaged fast in its effect is the Salisbury cure. A small piece of beefsteak and a little toast, once a day, nothing else, relieves, improves, but never heals perfectly. Under the same classification as the milk diet, which puzzles even the most advanced experts of fasting and dietetics by its partial success in many cases. The secret is this. If you replace 3 square meals a day consisting of at least 3 courses each with a few quarts of milk liquid, the obstructions in the human engine are much less. Read Lesson 5. You feel better, and the body partially eliminates and in many cases relieves your trouble. But all milk dieting patients suffer sooner or later from terrible constipation because milk is a first-class, sticky mucus former. Schroth cure. This so-called dry cure, founded by one of the greatest pioneers of naturopathy, is in its effect also a camouflaged fast. 3 days eating nothing other than dry bread, with nothing to drink. The 4th day, a limited drink of light wine and some food, combined with all-night wet packs. This causes a tremendous elimination, if you can stand the severity of this horse cure. Schroth had marvelous success and a worldwide reputation, but many who had gone through this quick help many times came to my sanitarium, and I found they had very weak hearts and lacked more or less the elasticity of the tissues. Read Lesson 5 again and you will understand the reason at once. I used the same principles of this cure in an improved form in cases where there was no reaction with the drink fast, or by the mucusless diet as follows. 2 or 3 days, nothing but dried fruits, followed by 1 day of juicy fruits and starchless vegetables, produces a most efficient elimination, but is only advisable for relatively strong people. There are hundreds of other dietetic cures on the market, and every once in a while, one of them becomes fashionable, from the long fast and fruit fast up to the so-called scientifically prepared mixtures of medical and non-medical dietitians. The average health seeker thinks that there is some special food or special mixture to be eaten for their particular ailment, and he or she tries everything, but always in vain, as long as they do not know or understand that there is one disease, inside dirt, waste, and obstructions, and that these obstructions must and can be eliminated only, and systematically only, by the opposite of disease-producing, mucus-forming foods. That is by the mucusless diet healing system. A mucusless diet consisting of fruits and herbs, meaning green leaf vegetables, considered unfashionable since the time of Moses, that great dietitian and faster. See Genesis. The more we learn about natural laws that rule and govern our health, the less we need fear the destructive onslaught of disease. Only through a mucus-free diet can we expect to eliminate the accumulation of waste and obstructions deposited in the body tissues during a lifetime of wrong eating. Give the body a clean bloodstream, and it will function harmoniously as nature intended it should. Lesson 12, Footnotes. Number 1. Reverend Sylvester Graham, 1794 through 1851, was a Presbyterian minister and dietary reformer in the United States. He advocated vegetarianism, temperance, and the control of sexual urges through a clean lifestyle. Today he is most known for inventing graham bread and crackers. Dr. Emmett Densmore, 1837 through 1911, was a medical doctor, inventor, author, and strong advocate for a progressive fruit and vegetable diet. He authored several influential books on health, including The Natural Food of Man, a brief statement of the principal arguments against the use of bread, cereals, pulses, and all other starch foods, 1890, and How Nature Cures, Compromising a New System of Hygiene, 1892. With his brother, he also invented the Densmore typewriter. Number 2. Raw food diet or raw vegan diet refers to the practice of consuming uncooked, unprocessed, plant-based, and often organic foods as a large percentage of one's diet. In practice, some raw foodists find it acceptable to frequently use blenders, food processors, juicers, and dehydrators, although some other practitioners view these as forms of processing and avoid them. Some will also periodically eat cooked foods or mucus-forming raw foods. The term vegan was coined by Donald Watson in 1944 to draw a distinction between a person who abstains from all animal products, including eggs, cheese, fish, etc., from vegetarians who avoid eating meat but still consume certain animal products. Once all non-plant-based items are eliminated, the mucusless diet becomes by definition vegan. Yet, many foods thought to be acceptable in veganism and raw foodism should be avoided or systematically transitioned away from when practicing the mucusless diet healing system. Number 3. Many people mistakenly believe that Ehret's work is inherently or only raw foodism or fruitarianism. Yet, as you can see, Ehret emphasizes moving away from mucus-forming foods above all else. Although the highest levels of the mucusless diet are raw, mucus-free foods, Ehret advocates using cooked mucusless foods and even some mildly mucus-forming items when necessary during the transition diet. Details about the transition diet will be discussed later in the book. Number 4. Johann Schroth, 1798 through 1856, was a pioneering Austrian naturopath and haulage contractor. At age 18, his knee was badly injured by a horse, and he successfully treated the affliction using cold compresses. Initially, he met a monk who advised him to wash his stiff joint with wet cloths several times a day. But as Schroth became tired of the repetitious activity, he developed a method of wearing cold compresses for several hours before changing them. Ultimately, the stiffness went away. Now, being aware of the effectiveness of the newfound method, he started using compresses for wounds, bruises, swellings, and stiffness of the joints for both humans and animals. He eventually earned a reputation as a healer of domestic animals, and subsequently used his methods on injured humans. Around 1830, Schroth founded a health spa at Bad Lindewies that gradually grew to prominence. He introduced the use of stem baths and full-body wraps as forms of naturopathic healing. After he had observed that sick animals refused to eat, Schroth propagated the idea of a strict diet for humans that included a regimen of intermittent days of dry and liquid fasting. His methods were touted as a means of purification and detoxification of the entire body by seekers of natural healing. Confusion in Dietetics, Part 3, Lesson 13. After this severe critique of all important dietetics, I must admit that I do not deny that all of them have, and have done, considerable good towards the development of the dietetic solution of the food problem and healing of diseases by diet. Reviewing the entire development during the past 25 years, this fact remains. With the progress of chemistry, medical experts arrived at the following conclusion. We now know exactly all of the elements contained in the human body, and therefore know what must be eaten for upbuilding, for replacement of used-up cells, and for producing vitality, efficiency, strength, and heat. You were taught in former lessons why these conclusions are wrong, and have produced the protein fad and later the mineral salt fad, and now the very latest fashion, i.e., the raw food fad. Without knowledge of the great unknown, their conclusions must be wrong. This great unknown, unknown to the chemical and medical experts, unknown to the average person and health seeker, unknown to the layperson dietitian, unknown to the general dietetic systems now in vogue. And this great unknown, O in my formula, V equals P minus O, is the waste, the mucus, acids and poisons, the obstructions or O, in the sick, and also in the average so-called healthy human body. In other words, if human nourishment could ever be figured by mathematical and chemical formulas telling exactly what to eat, you will still be fooled by nature, just so long as any ideal food is mixed with and put into this waste of mucus and acids already in the human system through years of wrong living. Nature confuses you, so long as you fail to recognize her facts and her truths. But nature herself is not fooled. To the average layperson, raw food reacts more or less mysteriously, as long as it is mixed with your own mucus, as long as it stirs up mucus and its toxemias in the unclean diseased body and eliminates these poisons. All laymen and experts covering the entire dietetic movement up to the present time are puzzled, confused, ignorant, and still in complete darkness of the fact that, in general, the average person first becomes worse, sometimes developing boils and all kinds of sores, troubles from indigestion, when they start what they believe to be a correct and best diet, living on a radical fruit, mucusless or raw food diet. Tell me what to eat, wail the sick. I want a daily menu for my special disease, like a drug prescription, and they then consider that as all sufficient. When the elimination sets in, they say, these foods don't agree with me, instead of recognizing that the transition diet has already started in a moderate way to dissolve and to eliminate the old waste in the body, with some disturbance, of course. You must make them realize the necessity of putting up with this temporary inconvenience and consider themselves fortunate indeed to be able to continue with their daily work instead of undergoing an operation, which would mean months in a hospital. The foods agree with them, but they do not agree with the foods. Now you may understand why the mucusless diet is a system in which every change in diet has certain duties to perform, is a diet of healing to be applied systematically according to the condition of the sick. You will now understand why and in what manner I differ from all others. The mucusless diet healing system is not a collection of different menus for every disease. It is not made-up combinations of valuable and nourishing foods. It is not like a medical prescription or a compilation of the standard diets suitable for all diseases. But it is a system of dietetic changes and dietetic improvements, a system of dietetic elimination of disease matter, waste, mucus, and poisons, a system of slowly changing and improving the diet as a diet of healing towards and up to the ideal and natural food of humans, fruits only, or fruits and green leaf vegetables, the mucusless diet. It is therefore a personally supervised and in every case different, modified, scientific, systematical, progressive method of eating your way to health, combined, if found necessary, with short or longer fasts. It is a healing process which every sick person must undergo if they want to be perfectly healed. It is an exclusive dietetic, curing and healing, rebranding and regeneration process, based on the use of harmless and natural food for humankind, coined and set biologically by the Creator in Genesis, fruits and herbs or mucusless diet. Nature will do her part if we but give her half a chance. Try it out for yourself and watch for the results. Lesson 13. Footnotes. Number 1. In general, the removal of physiological waste and encumbrances is referred to as elimination by modern-day practitioners of the mucusless diet. In addition to the removal of physical waste from the body, the term may also be associated with the uncomfortable symptoms that may arise during a period of great healing. The term healing crisis is a commonly used and related naturopathic term that refers to a period of intensive physical and emotional cleansing. Common symptoms include the expectoration of various colors of mucus from all orifices, fever, aches and pains, headaches, dizziness and vertigo, mood swings, diarrhea, vomiting, loss of appetite, depression or anxieties, heart palpitations, localized pain at the area of obstruction, etc. Ragnar Berg's Table, Revisited. Lesson 14. You can now understand that the dietetic problem is not solved, as the average person imagines, through simply knowing which foods are best and the kind of food the mucusless diet consists of. In the previous lesson, you were taught knowledge unknown to all others. What happens and what must happen in the human body if the sick person eats only the best foods or takes a long fast. Later you will learn how this stirring up and eliminating of mucus by good foods and fasting can and must be controlled by yourself, the treating physician, or dietitian. You may now see of what little value and how injurious it may become for the average health seeker to stuff their stomach daily with terrible mixtures of good food, raw food combinations, in the belief that raw food alone will do it, without any plan or system, without any regard for the disease and their mental or physical condition. In spite of my antipathy towards faddists, I will submit a selection of tables prepared by one of the most advanced experts in physiological chemistry, Ragnar Berg, of the Special Laboratory for Food Research at Dr. Lehmann's Sanitarium of Germany. Editor's note by Professor Spira on the Berg table. The original Ragnar Berg table can be problematic and quite confusing for first-time readers, and many modern-day mucusless diet practitioners have wanted to see new, revised editions of the book that omit this chapter or improve it in some way. Ultimately, the purpose of the Berg table was to show that Ehret was not alone in believing that acid-forming foods were injurious to the body. The problem is that many of the items in the original table that are actually very much acid and mucus-forming are listed as acid-binding. Ehret does try to explain that the table should be taken with a grain of salt. In the material that precedes the Berg table in the original text, Ehret explains, the majority of foods he, Berg, calls acid-forming is what I call mucus-forming, and what he calls acid-binding, that is, non-acid food, is almost exactly what I call mucusless. The key phrases are the majority and almost exactly. Then he explains, the mere fact that some foods given in the list are acid-binding does not necessarily mean that I endorse their use. This list is given as a comparison only and should be studied for what it is worth. Please understand that I am not endorsing Berg's theories. Yet, most readers tend to assume that the table is meant to be a mucusless versus mucus-forming foods chart. The chapter is more of an attempt to illustrate his alkaline versus acid-forming food theories using the work of his peers. Most of what Ehret has published stands the test of time, yet the writings that do not tend to do so represent his attempts to dialogue with his contemporaries, of whom he is greatly more advanced. For the purposes of this 21st century educational edition of the Mucusless Diet, I've taken a great editorial liberty to provide a clearly defined list of acid-forming, pus and mucus-forming, and acid-binding, mucusless foods. As I have come to know them, I have also added new categories for acid-forming stimulants that are not necessarily mucus-forming, but are still injurious to the body and should be avoided or transitioned away from. One of the most useful aspects of the Berg table was its list of fruits and vegetables. I've included almost all of the food items from the original list, along with many other items in common use today. Keep in mind that this is not a list of what foods I recommend on the mucusless diet, but an objective list of mucus or acid-forming versus non-acid-forming foods. I do not recommend all of the items that are technically mucus-free, and there are some mucus-forming items that may be an important part of your transition. Many of the starchy vegetables or fatty fruits in this list may be used while on the transition diet. I also include a section for vegetables that are all, or relatively, starchless, although they may contain a little starch. Some of them have been identified to be great vegetables to use during the transition. Also, later in the book, Ehret will explain how cooking some starchy vegetables improves their cleansing abilities. Some vegetables that are quite starchy when raw become relatively mucusless when slightly cooked. Pus-forming and very mucus-forming foods listed below are the ones that should really be avoided from the beginning if possible. But moderately or slightly mucus-forming items may be used effectively during the transition. This is not an exhaustive list of foods, but the most common ones are addressed. Ultimately, Ehret's transition diet will show you how to use less harmful mucus-forming foods to get away from the worst ones. All of these issues will be explored in forthcoming chapters. Professor Spira's list of acid-forming and acid-binding mucusless foods. Pus, mucus, or acid-forming foods. Flesh, pus-forming. Blood of animals. Eggs, all kinds. Lard. Meat. Beef, chicken, horse, dog, mutton/lamb, turkey, veal. Pork. Bacon, ham, sausage, gammon, chitterlings, pig feet. Wild game. Bison, buffalo, ostrich, rabbit, venison, etc. Margarine, made with animal fat. Fish, pus-forming. Crustacean, crab, crawfish, lobster, shrimp. Fish, all types. Mollusks, clams, oysters, mussels, snails, etc. Roe, caviar. Salmon, shellfish. Dairy products, pus-forming. Butter, cow. Buttermilk. Cheese, all kinds. Cream. Creme fraiche. Kefir. Milk, all animals and kinds, raw organic, skim, 1 or 2%, etc. Yogurt. Cereals, moderately mucus-forming. Barley. Breads, all kinds. Barley, black, rye, white, graham, pumpernickel, zwieback, etc. Cereal grains, all kinds. Maize, farina, kamut. Millet, oats, spelt. White or brown rice, whole or refined wheat, etc. Cornmeal. Pastas. Pseudo-cereals, all kinds. Amaranth, buckwheat, chia, coxcomb, quinoa, etc. Beans, moderately mucus-forming. Beans, all kinds and forms. Black beans, black-eyed peas, fava beans, butter beans, cannelli beans, chickpeas/garbanzo beans, edamame, Great Northern beans, Italian beans, kidney beans, lentils, lima beans, mung beans, navy beans, pinto beans, soybeans, split peas, string green beans, white beans, etc. Nuts and seeds, mildly mucus-forming. Nuts, all kinds. Acorns, almonds, Brazil nuts, cashews, chestnuts, hazelnuts, peanuts, pecans, pistachios, walnuts, etc. Seeds, all kinds, sunflower, pumpkin, hemp, sesame, etc. Processed foods, pus and/or very mucus-forming. Dried convenience foods, fast foods, frozen convenience foods, packaged convenience foods, processed meat. Confectionaries, candy, sweets, pus and/or very mucus-forming. Baked goods, all kinds including pies, cakes, pastries, etc. Candy, all kinds, bars, caramels, chocolate, fudge, jelly candies, rock candy, taffy. Gelatin, jello. Ice cream, dairy and non-dairy. Marshmallow. Acidic fermented or distilled drinks and syrups, acid-forming stimulants. Agave nectar because it is too highly processed. Alcoholic beverages, all kinds, ale, beer, brandy, champagne. Hard cider, liqueur, mead, porter, rum, sake/rice wine, gin, herbal wine, lager, fruit wine, vodka, whiskey, tequila, etc. Cocoa. Coffee. Kombucha tea. Soft drink soda pop. Syrups, brown rice, barley malt, chocolate, corn, molasses, artificial flavoring. Tea, all kinds from the Theaceae family. Vinegar, white apple cider. Fermented foods and sauces, acid-forming stimulants. Fish sauce, fermented vegetables, all, kimchi/cabbage and other veggies. Olives. Pickles/cucumbers, sauerkraut/cabbage, etc. Miso. Sauces with vinegar, hot sauce, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, relish, tartar, barbecue, salad dressings, salsa, etc. Soy sauce. Vegetarian and vegan processed foods, moderately mucus-forming. Chips, corn, potato, plantain, etc. Frozen vegan breakfast foods, waffles, etc. Hummus, processed chickpeas. Lab-grown animal tissue. Margarine, nutritional yeast. Pasta, egg-free. Pasteurized 100% fruit juice, potentially acid-forming. Plant milks, grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes, including soy, rice, etc. Plant-based butters. Nuts, seeds, and legumes, including soy, peanut, etc. Plant-based creamers. Soy lecithin, food additives. Tempeh. Texturized vegetable protein, mock meats, including soy, etc. Tofu, vegan baked goods, vegan confections, all kinds, chocolates, ice cream, etc. Vegan cheese substitutes, vegan mayonnaise, vegan whipped cream, yogurts plant-based. Oils, fatty and mildly mucus-forming. Oil, all kinds, avocado, chia seed, coconut, corn, cottonseed, flaxseed, grapeseed, hempseed, nut, olive, palm, peanut, quinoa, rapeseed, including canola, safflower, soybean, etc. Salts and spices, stimulants, and potentially acid-forming. Black peppercorns, cayenne pepper, chili powder, cream of tartar, curry powder, nutmeg, paprika, pepper, salt, celery crystal, iodized C, vanilla extract. Starchy or fatty vegetables and fruits, slightly mucus-forming. Artichoke, avocados, banana unripe, carrots raw, cassava, cauliflower, coconut meat, corn, durian, fungus, mushrooms, green peas, olives, vegan breakfast foods, waffles, etc. Hummus, processed chickpeas, lab-grown animal tissue. Margarine, nutritional yeast. Pasta, egg-free. Pasteurized 100% fruit juice, potentially acid-forming. Plant milks, grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes, including soy, rice, etc. Plant-based butters. Nuts, seeds, and legumes, including soy, peanut, etc. Plant-based creamers. Soy lecithin, food additives. Tempeh. Texturized vegetable protein, mock meats, including soy, etc. Tofu, vegan baked goods, vegan confections, all kinds, chocolates, ice cream, etc. Vegan cheese substitutes, vegan mayonnaise, vegan whipped cream, yogurts plant-based. Oils, fatty and mildly mucus-forming. Oil, all kinds, avocado, chia seed, coconut, corn, cottonseed, flaxseed, grapeseed, hempseed, nut, olive, palm, peanut, quinoa, rapeseed, including canola, safflower, soybean, etc. Salts and spices, stimulants, and potentially acid-forming. Black peppercorns, cayenne pepper, chili powder, cream of tartar, curry powder, nutmeg, paprika, pepper, salt, celery crystal, iodized C, vanilla extract. Starchy or fatty vegetables and fruits, slightly mucus-forming. Artichoke, avocados, banana unripe, carrots raw, cassava, cauliflower, coconut meat, corn, durian, fungus, mushrooms, green peas, olives, parsnips, plantains, pumpkins, raw or baked white potatoes, raw squashes, winter acorn, butternut, etc., raw sweet potatoes, rutabaga, turnip. Acid-binding, non-mucus-forming or mucusless mucus-free foods. Green leaf vegetables, mucusless, arugula, bok choy, cabbage, collard, dandelion leaf, kale, leafy herbs, basil, parsley, cilantro, rosemary, thyme, etc. Lettuce, green, red, romaine, Boston bib, iceberg. Mustard, spinach, Swiss chard, turnip, watercress. Raw vegetables, root, stem, fruit. All are relatively starchless and mucusless. Asparagus, black radish with skin, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, celery, cucumbers, dandelion, dill, endives, green onions, horseradish with skin, leeks, onions, peppers, green, red, yellow, or orange, red beets, rhubarb, sea vegetables, sprouts, alfalfa, brassica, green leaf, radish, sugar beets, tomatoes, young radish, zucchini. Baked vegetables, root, stem, fruit, all are relatively starchless and mucusless. Acorn squash baked, asparagus, broccoli steamed or baked, Brussels sprouts steamed, butternut squash baked, carrots steamed, cauliflower steamed or baked, green peas steamed, peppers green, red, yellow, or orange, pumpkins steamed or baked, spaghetti squash baked, sweet potato baked, zucchini steamed or baked. Ripe fruits mucusless. Apples, apricots, banana, black cherries, black berries, blood orange, cantaloupe, cherries, grapefruit, grapes, honeybell tangelos, honeydew, lemons, mandarin, mangoes, nectarine, oranges, peaches, pears, pineapple, plums, pomegranates, prunes, raisins, raspberries, sour cherries, strawberries, sweet cherries, tangerines, watermelon. Dried or baked fruits mucusless. Apples, apricots, bananas, blueberries, cherries, cranberries, currants, currants dried, dates, dates dried, figs, figs dried, grapes/raisins, kiwi, mango, papaya, peaches, pears, persimmon, pineapple, plums/prunes, strawberries, 100% fruit jellies, syrups, and honey, coconut water, fruit jellies, no sugar added, real maple syrup, 100%, no preservatives, honey, B. Transition Diet, Lesson 15. In the preceding lessons, you were taught the foods that are best, as well as those that are bad and which are the worst ones. You know the exact reason why, and also what is going on in the system, what happens with good foods as well as with bad ones in the human body. You have learned that even the best foods, which have the highest, most vigorous healing properties, can become harmful, even dangerous in the beginning if not carefully used, that they become mixed with the filthy mucus and poisons that they loosen up in the body, and thereby become poisoned, entering the bloodstream in this poisoned condition. Everything is perfectly performed by nature through evolutional, progressive changes, developments, and accomplishments, and not by catastrophes. Nothing is more incorrect than the mistaken idea that a decades-old chronic disease can be healed through a very long fast or radically extended strict fruit diet. Nature's mills grind slow but sure. My experience of over 20 years, covering for the most part the extremely severe cases of all kinds of diseases, has proven that a carefully selected and progressively changing transition diet is the best and surest way for every patient to start a cure, especially for the average mixed eater. As long as wrong foods of civilization, are partly used, I call it a mucus-lean diet. Transition means the slow change from disease-producing foods to disease-healing foods, which I call the mucusless diet. The speed of elimination depends upon quantities and qualities of food, and can therefore be controlled and regulated according to the condition of the patient. The worst and by far the unhealthiest habit is the heavy breakfast. No solid food should be eaten in the early morning at all if you desire to secure the best results. It is permissible to take the drink that you are accustomed to, but nothing else. If you find this difficult to do in the beginning, you may drink again later on, so that your lunch is taken in the empty stomach. This is so very important that a number of light diseases can be cured by the so-called no breakfast plan alone. This subject is more fully covered in fasting lessons 18, 19, 20, and 21. It is best that no more than 2 meals a day be eaten, even though the quantity you eat is as much as if 3 or even 4 meals were eaten. Later, when the stomach is cleaner, a small dish of fresh fruits when in season may be eaten for breakfast if desired. If possible, the first meal, lunch, should be eaten between 10 and 11 in the morning, and supper not sooner than 5 or 6 in the afternoon. Another very important rule when eating for health is simplicity. In other words, do not mix too many kinds of food at one meal. Count the different number of items in the average meal of today, and the total will startle you. Never drink during a meal. If accustomed to a beverage with your meal, wait a short while after you have eaten before drinking. Soup should be avoided with meals, as the more liquid taken, the more difficult for proper digestion. If a warm drink is desired, for instance, as a breakfast drink during the winter time, make a broth by cooking for a long time different kinds of vegetables, such as spinach, onions, carrots, cabbages, etc., and drink the juice only. Menus for the first 2 weeks. Lunch. A combination salad consisting of raw grated carrots or coleslaw or both, half and half, and 2 or 3 spoonfuls of a stewed or canned vegetable, such as green peas, string beans, or spinach. Add to this one of the following items, whatever is in season: cucumbers, tomatoes, green onions, lettuce, or other green leafy vegetables, celery, etc., but only a sufficient quantity for flavoring. You may make an oil dressing according to your taste if desired, using lemon juice instead of vinegar, for flavoring purposes only. The rest of the meal should consist of 1 baked or stewed vegetable such as cauliflower, beets, parsnips, turnips, squash, etc. If you still feel as though you were hungry, you may eat a small baked sweet potato or 1 slice of toasted bran or whole wheat bread. Fats of any kind, including ordinary butter, are unnatural and therefore should not be eaten. However, should you crave fats, it is best to use peanut butter or some other nut butter on your bread. During the winter months, canned vegetables may be used when green vegetables are not available. Drink the juice separately in the morning and mix the green or string beans or spinach, etc., with the salad stock as described above, coleslaw or raw carrots. The object of this menu is to supply the broom to provide means for mechanically cleansing the digestive tract by quantities of raw, baked, and stewed starchless vegetables. This may be called Ehret's standard combination salad, the intestinal broom, spoken of so frequently and so necessary for properly eliminating the stored-up poisons now being loosened during the body's house cleaning. Supper. Mix half and half, a stewed fruit such as applesauce, stewed dried apricots, stewed dried peaches, or stewed prunes, with some cottage cheese or very ripe bananas, mashed, sweetened with brown sugar or honey to taste. The bananas would be for a less mucused or less acid stomach. Menus for the second 2 weeks. Lunch. First, a baked apple, applesauce, or other stewed dried fruit. After 10 or 15 minutes, a combination salad as suggested in the first menu, and bran or whole wheat bread toasted if still hungry. Cow butter should be gradually avoided and replaced by a vegetable or nut butter during the transition. By allowing the cooked vegetables to soak on the salad for 10 to 15 minutes, it serves the purpose of a dressing. Supper. A baked or stewed vegetable, as suggested in the first menu, followed with a vegetable salad made of lettuce and cucumber or raw celery or a little coleslaw. Menus for the third 2 weeks. Lunch. During the summer, this should be an exclusive fruit meal, one kind only. In the winter, a sweet dried fruit, for example, prunes, figs, raisins, or dates, eaten with apples or oranges, or the dried fruits can be chewed together, with a very few nuts, and then followed by the fresh fruits. If in the beginning this fails to satisfy, wait for 10 to 15 minutes and then eat a few leaves of lettuce or a cold vegetable either cooked or raw, but just a small quantity. Supper, a combination salad as suggested in the first menu, followed by a baked vegetable. Menus for the fourth 2 weeks. Lunch, fruits as in previous menus. Supper, first eat fruits, either baked or stewed or fresh, followed a little later by a cold cooked vegetable or better still a vegetable salad. If you find that you are losing weight too rapidly, the elimination should be slowed down by eating bread or potatoes after the vegetables. Should you feel an intense craving in the beginning for meat, a great desire returning which you cannot resist, then eat vegetables only on that day and no fruits. A dissolved mystery. The reason doctors and even naturopaths in general, as well as the layperson, do not believe in a fruit diet or a mucusless diet is simply this. Whoever experiments without experience with this kind of diet, whether sick or well, loses their faith immediately as soon as they experience a crisis and become what they believe to be seriously ill. That is to say, a day on which a great amount of dissolved waste, debris, mucus, and other poisons are taken back into the circulation. A day of great elimination. This produces at the same time a strong, almost irresistible craving for wrong foods and, strange as it may seem, the patient most strongly craves for the wrong food which was once his or her favorite. This is explained by the fact that nature is eliminating through the circulation the waste of these foods, and it is when they are in the circulation the craving and desire is naturally enough produced. This, then, is why it is of extreme importance that every meal of a diet of healing and cleansing must leave the body as soon as possible. Being mixed with the loosened and dissolved poisons, they cause these uncomfortable conditions, a fact that has never been perfectly understood or explained. Certain foods prove more laxative under certain conditions. Therefore, eat the foods that you have personally found to be the most laxative in your own body. If you do not experience a regular bowel movement before retiring, always help with an enema, a laxative, or both. A natural laxative that helps, which you will undoubtedly find very efficient, is eating a few dried prunes before the other fruits are taken. A very good aid to elimination, which can be used during the transition diet period, until the bowels are cleansed from the old sticky waste and until such time as the bowels act freely from the new diet, is a harmless herb vegetable compound perfected by myself, and the most efficient intestinal broom and bowel regulator known. Formula for Ehret's intestinal broom. Quantities are given in parts so that you can prepare any amount that you require. Note, all ground ingredients should be about as coarse as loose tea. The powdered ones about as fine as powdered sugar. These are all fairly common herbs, and you should be able to purchase them either at your health food store or from any herb shop. 6 parts ground senna leaves. 3 parts ground buckthorn bark. 1 part ground psyllium seed husks. 1/10 part powdered sassafras root bark. 1/2 part ground dark anise seed. 1/10 part ground buchu leaves. 1/2 part ground blonde psyllium seed. 1/8 part powdered Irish moss. 1/8 part granulated agar-agar. 1/2 part ground dark fennel seed. Mix the first 3 ingredients thoroughly. Then, combine the remaining 7 real well, and add this to the mixture. If you have a blender, it makes an ideal mixer for preparing this herbal formula. The intestinal broom is easy to use. Usually a small amount, about the quantity that fits on half a teaspoon or less, swallowed with a glassful of water is sufficient for adults. It may be increased or decreased according to your own reaction. Other uses are sprinkled over salads or brewed as tea. A half teaspoon to a cup of boiling water, remove from heat, and allow to steep for 10 to 15 minutes. It has a fascinating flavor. Lesson 15. Footnotes. Number 1. Non-fat fruits and green leafy vegetables are the best foods. Plant-based starches, grains, and fats are mucus-forming, but some of them may be used moderately during the transition phases. Meat and dairy are the worst foods and should be avoided at all costs. Number 2. It can be very helpful to use vegetable broth to extend a liquid fast. However, be mindful not to lose control and eat the cooked vegetables used to make the broth. Overcooked vegetables would not be the best foods with which to break any kind of fast. Number 3. When Ehret mentions coleslaw, he is referring to shredded cabbage without mayonnaise or dressing. Number 4. Ehret is against vinegar, although he does not explicitly say so. Twice he mentions that lemon juice should be used instead of vinegar for dressings. Some people believe that vinegar or fermented foods become alkaline after eating. Yet, Ehret suggests that the only acidic foods that naturally become alkaline during digestion are raw, tree-ripened acid fruits. Although vinegar does not leave behind mucus, it is certainly acid-forming. It is also a common relapse trigger that causes a mucusless diet practitioner to crave worse mucus formers. Thus, it is best to avoid vinegar. Number 5. Many mucusless diet practitioners are able to use wheat products during the transition with no major problems. But like lactose intolerance, people's ability to tolerate certain mucus-forming foods is beginning to wane. In recent years, more attention has been paid to the negative effects of wheat products as more people are starting to experience negative physiological reactions toward them. If you are sensitive toward wheat gluten, mucus, then avoid using it. Find bread that is made from gluten-free grains such as quinoa or buckwheat. However, avoid gluten-free items that use rice flour, potato starch, or other excessively gluey items. It must be stressed that if any kind of bread is used during the transition, it be very well toasted to aid in elimination. It should be 100% grain, sprouted is preferable, have as few ingredients as possible, toasted well, and eaten toward the end of your vegetable meal. Also, it is advantageous to not eat any toast in the vegetable meals that follow a fast, especially as you become more advanced. It is best that such meals be mucusless. Keep in mind that wheat-free mucus-forming items may have the same negative physiological effects as those with gluten. If this is the case, then these kinds of mucus formers will need to be eliminated earlier in your transition. Number 6. Ehret wrote the mucusless diet before the existence of modern-day supermarkets that offer a wide variety of fresh fruits and vegetables from around the world year-round. When available, it is always better to use raw fruits and vegetables for your transitional meals. Frozen fruits and vegetables may also be used when there are few fresh vegetables. If no fresh produce is available, canned items can be used as Ehret specifies. If used, be sure to obtain cans that have no preservatives, sugar, or corn syrup. Number 7. One surprising item that Ehret suggests people use in the early stages of the transition is cottage cheese. Although it is dairy and certainly mucus-forming, it eliminates relatively better than other dairy products. Yogurt also falls into this small category of transitional dairy products. This may be something to explore if you are coming from a particularly bad diet. However, it is certainly not a requirement. If you do not crave or feel the need to use cottage cheese, it is advisable not to do so, and it is certainly not something to be eaten after you have been transitioning on the diet for an extended period of time. Number 8. As a rule of thumb, it is advisable to transition to baked sweet potatoes as soon as possible. Number 9. The word enema refers to the injection of liquid into the rectum through the anus for the purpose of cleansing and evacuating the bowels. Many practitioners of the mucusless diet regularly use enemas and view it as a form of general hygiene. Enemas or internal baths will be discussed by Ehret in forthcoming lessons. The word laxative refers to a food that stimulates the evacuation of the bowels. It must be stressed that Ehret does not promote the use of unnatural laxative medications or store-bought saline enemas, such as fleet enemas. Many modern-day practitioners of the mucusless diet exclusively use lemon juice enemas. For detailed instructions about how to perform lemon juice enemas, see Spira Speaks, Dialogues and Essays on the Mucusless Diet Healing System by Professor Spira. Number 10. Ehret does not discuss the use of medicinal herbs in detail within the mucusless diet, except in this section pertaining to his intestinal broom formula. In the definite cure of chronic constipation, after discussing the danger of unnatural laxatives, Ehret says this about his formula. Among numerous laxatives on the market, those of botanical origin are the least harmful. After many years of experience, I have prepared a special mixture of this kind. It has the advantage of removing the old, solid feces, obstructions, and mucus from the intestines without causing the usual diarrhea and constipation as an after effect. It is to be used in the beginning only, as an aid, and will not have to be used continually. As soon as the intestines are cleansed from the retained masses of feces and other obstructions, and the mucusless or mucus-lean diet is taken up, you will realize the truth of the previously stated facts, the definite cure of chronic constipation. Overall, Ehret supports the use of rational ancillaries that aid cleansing, such as herbs, sunbathing, exercise, colon irrigation, breathing exercises, etc. The criterion is that they help the practitioner safely eliminate constitutional waste and transition toward a mucus-free diet. It must be understood that these ancillaries do not perform the healing, but the body heals itself once cleansed of waste. It would not be advisable to rely too heavily or to develop a physical or mental dependency on any particular ancillary, including medicinal herbs. With the proliferation of modern medicine, people have become all too accustomed to getting immediate gratification from popping pills, and herbs should never be thought about or treated in this manner. True healing is not a quick fix, but a regeneration that comes from removing all waste from the body. Ehret also does not advocate the use of any kind of nutritional supplements, as he does not believe the body can use unnatural, isolated chemicals that do not come from fresh fruits and vegetables. According to Ehret, the primary power of healing comes from a mucusless diet with periods of rational fasting, or as Hippocrates said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Transition Diet Part 2 Lesson 16 Special Transition Recipes. Being known as a diet expert, I receive continual requests for a diet book, or at least a collection of food combinations, mucusless recipes, and menus. Many volumes have already been published by numerous dietitians, which are now on the market. They call them scientific diets, but not one of them is in accord with nature, such as exist in the animal kingdom, and which is simplicity, with absolutely no mixtures at all. I must again remind you that cattle, for instance, when in the wilderness, eat absolutely nothing else other than grass during their entire life. No animal when eating combines different foods at the same time or even drinks between mouthfuls of food, with the possible exception of domesticated animals, changed into mixed eaters by civilized humans. The ideal, and at the same time most natural, method of eating for humans is one kind of fresh fruit in season, and you will soon notice after you have been living on the transition diet for a while that you will feel more satisfied and in fact are better nourished with one kind of fruit than with all kinds of scientific mixtures or prepared made-up foods. This condition cannot, of course, take place until your body is perfectly clean. During the transition diet, I use food combinations and mixtures prepared from cooked, steamed, or baked foods for technical reasons, to better perform the healing process intelligently, systematically, and under control. Vegetables and fruits. My experience has taught me that only raw celery, lettuce, carrots, and beets combine well with fruits. In general, it is best never to use more than 3 kinds with the same combination. Always use one kind as the prevailing stock or base. For a bad, acid, or mucus stomach, use menus consisting of more vegetables and very little fruits. For a stomach in better condition, or the average stomach, use more fruits and fewer vegetables. The following is an example. Number 1. For a bad stomach, take as stock 2/3 grated or shredded raw carrots, or grated celery or grated beets may be used. Although carrots are best, add 1/3 of finely sliced very ripe bananas and a few raisins or sliced dried figs. No nuts or cereals. Never mix nuts with wet fruits. Number 2. For a better stomach, take as stock 2/3 sliced or grated apples, 1/3 shredded carrots or celery or beets, to increase the efficiency of this combination in its aggressive, dissolving functions as a mucus and poison eliminator. Add more raisins, sliced dried figs, honey, or fruit jelly. Fruit acid dissolves waste and forms gases. Fruit sugar ferments in the waste and stirs it up, also forming gases. Both eliminate, and for this reason it can become harmful if they work too intensively. It is therefore advisable to use raw vegetables as a broom more frequently. For this same reason, use stewed fruits in the beginning, or at least half and half. For example, half raw grated apples with the skin, and half applesauce sweetened with honey. A square meal substitute. Before a crisis, during or shortly after, or to satisfy a craving for wrong food, especially rich in fat, you may take this once in a while. While it is too rich, it is much less harmful than a square meal, and will be found to be very enjoyable. Take some grated coconut, mixed or eaten together with applesauce, stewed prunes, or sweetened apricots. Very ripe bananas, or if unripe, then baked, will be found to satisfy when unusually hungry. Other kinds of grated nuts or nut butter may be served once in a while for this purpose, but are too rich in protein and will produce, if continually used, mucus and uric acid. Improved cooked vegetables. Only one kind of cooked vegetable should be used at one meal. It may be eaten either cold or warm and mixed with green salads and raw vegetables. If cabbage, carrots, turnips, beets, cauliflower, onions, etc. are slowly stewed in very little water, or best, if carefully baked, they become sweeter, which proves that the carbohydrates are developed into grape sugar, more or less, and the mineral salts are not destroyed and not extracted. This is in fact an improvement and not a waste. In winter, canned foods may be used as a substitute for fresh ones. I differ from the raw food fanatics because the food value is not important in a diet of healing. It is of more importance that the patient should and shall enjoy his or her change of diet during the transition, until their taste and conditions have improved. Special mucus eliminator recipes. Number 1. Raisins and figs or nuts, masticated thoroughly with raw green onions at the same time. These must not be eaten separately to secure best results. Number 2. Grated horseradish mixed with honey. After mixing, allow to stand to take off sharp taste. The honey is only used to make it more palatable. 2/3 horseradish and 1/3 honey, or to suit the taste. The ordinary radish, especially the black radish, may also be used the same way, or finely sliced and eaten alone as a salad. For consumptives who cough without spitting, give 1 spoonful every once in a while. There is a surprising amount of mineral salts in radishes, especially the black radish. Recipe for a special dissolver of hardened mucus and uric acid. With the following recipe, I once healed a woman who, after 6 years of paralysis, became entirely normal when both fasting and the mucusless diet failed to affect a recovery. It cannot be taken into a mucus-filled stomach. The recipe follows. Take the juice and pulp of 4 lemons. Grate and peel 1 lemon and mix with the juice. Sweeten with honey, brown sugar, or fruit jelly to taste. The object of the sweetening is to make the mixture less sour and bitter. Dressings. This is really a question of personal taste. A good salad or olive oil with lemon juice to taste is simple and good. A spoonful of peanut butter or nut butter dissolved in water and with a little lemon juice added is another simple recipe. Add finely sliced onions, green if desired. Homemade mayonnaise that uses lemon instead of vinegar is not especially harmful during the transition diet and can be used if you enjoy it. Tomatoes cooked into a sauce or a good canned tomato soup mixed with the dressing may help you enjoy the transition diet. Drinks. Even if the use of a good table salt is discontinued, you will sometimes be thirsty during your transition diet because your mucus, now back in the circulation, and the waste of decayed unnatural foods eaten with salt during your former life is very salty. When in the circulation, you will suffer from a natural thirst. A light lemonade with a little honey or brown sugar will relieve the thirst much better than plain water. The juice of any of the acid or sub-acid fruits makes a good drink, and the best is sweet apple cider if not too sweet. Postum, cereal coffee, or even light genuine coffee, if this was your customary drink, can be used during the transition period. Supplement to transition diet menus and combinations. The standard menu of the day in my sanitarium, besides special prescriptions for patients under personal treatment, was as follows. A drink in the morning. Lunch, 1 or 2 kinds of fruits. Supper, vegetables, mucus-lean or mucusless. This diet quickly brings the average person, not called sick, into better condition. Slight spells may be manifested in some manner or other, but an old chronic or severe disease, caused chiefly through a drug-poisoned body, must be treated by systematically and individually prescribed daily menus, continually changing same, speeding up and slowing down, according to the patient's changing condition.